I'm Leah Hazard, and I'm going to read to you from my book, Hard Pushed, a Midwife Story. And this is part of a chapter called Crystal, 23 weeks and 3 days. I heard Crystal before I saw her. Her curtain was drawn, but she appeared to be having an animated conversation with somebody at her bedside. So I said that her pal's cousin was a fucking liar because I saw her up the shops with Danny's brother last week and she looked like a pure clown, like a fucking riot. I pulled the curtain back just enough to see the end of the bed where Crystal was wiggling her feet back and forth in a pair of pink fluffy slippers. I could see a flash of ankle and, yes, the hem of Mickey Mouse pajama bottoms. Crystal laughed loudly, and as I drew closer, I saw that she was lying back on a pile of pillows, phone propped up on her knees, FaceTiming a friend who was visible only on the tiny screen of her mobile phone. "She's all sugar or all shite, that Brittany," said Crystal, sighing. Then, catching sight of me, she sat up in bed and brought the phone back up towards her ear. The phone cover was a giant latex panda with googly eyes. "Right, I need to go, the nurse is here. Right, okay, bye, bye, see you later." Then to me, "Hiya!" She beamed, and her smile was a gleaming, crowded jumble, a few tiny milk teeth still vying for space with their permanent cousins, an orthodontist's dream. The face of an 8-year-old may have been a bit of an exaggeration, but not a million miles from the truth. Crystal looked barely old enough to be in secondary school, let alone in the hospital on her own, and on the brink of having a preterm delivery. Even in her current condition, I couldn't imagine her thinking that boys were anything other than gross. In fact, maybe the escapades that brought her to hospital had only reinforced that opinion. She'd evidently tried to contour her cheeks in line with the latest makeup trend, but the stripes of bronzer across her face made her look like a child who'd fallen asleep in a bowl of Cocoa Pops. Something about this misguided attempt at glamour reminded me of my teenage self, although Crystal exuded a kind of easy charisma that I could only have dreamed of at that age. She was a young girl trying on the identity of a ballsy, brazen woman, and the effect was both awkward and compelling. I wheeled a blood pressure machine up to the bedside and started with the classic opening line of midwives, nurses, and doctors everywhere. "So, tell me what's been happening." Strangely, this greeting brings me out in a cold sweat when uttered by my own GP, who's about as threatening as a box of kittens. My hands shake, my voice quivers, and the cool, collected midwife suddenly becomes a stammering mess, unable even to request a repeat prescription without apologizing at least 12 times for wasting the doctor's time. Put me in a blue tunic and a pair of beaten-up orthopedic shoes, though, and I'm back in control, the words of my well-practiced script tripping easily off my tongue. "Well," Crystal began, "this girl Brittany, she thinks I'm a pure muppet, right? Because I saw her with this boy who was messaging me." Sorry, Crystal. It was probably best to clarify my intentions before the Brittany saga reached its epic conclusion. "I meant, what's brought you to the hospital?" "Ah, sorry, nurse." I ground my teeth. With all the enormous respect due to nurses who can be extremely skilled and specialized, being called a nurse is something that grates on midwives like nails on a chalkboard. Our role is as different and distinctive as our title, of which each and every one of us is immensely proud. However, now was not the moment for time-consuming explanation, so I kept my opinions to myself as Crystal continued. "I thought I was leaking water in double maths first thing this morning, except technically it wasn't double maths because I was dogging it, and I was actually with my pal Tammy getting a McDonald's, and we were just sitting down with our McMuffins when I was like, holy shit, Tammy, my pants are soaking. I think I've just pissed myself." And she was like, "That's fucking rank." And I was like, "I know, but I need to go to the hospital." So we went back to my house to get my bag and feed my rabbits, and then Tammy's brother Dean dropped me off in his van, which is seriously rank, and Tammy had to get back for 4th period geography, so yeah. Right. Head slightly swimming from Crystal's exhaustive history, I remembered the blood pressure cuff in my hand and wrapped it round Crystal's skinny arm, pulling it as tight as it would go. I mentally composed my documentation for this case. Patient began draining liquor in McDonald's. Unlikely though it may have sounded, I had also recently looked after patient who lost consciousness in the middle aisle of Lidl and patient who ruptured her membranes while pushing trolley in Asda. The worlds of retail and obstetrics collide much more frequently than the general public might imagine. "So, is the baby coming today, nurse?" Crystal asked, as I went through the usual sequence of checking her blood pressure, pulse, temperature, and respirations. "Hopefully not," I replied. I put my handheld sonic aid to her tummy and heard the reassuring thump, thump, thump of the baby's heartbeat. "Nurse!" I froze as I cleared a dinner tray from the room next to Crystal's. There was no mistaking the voice. I rushed into room 2 to find Crystal standing in the middle of the floor, pajama bottoms and knickers pulled down to her knees, with a steady trickle of olive green liquid running down her thighs. It was unmistakable. Amniotic fluid mixed with meconium, the murky, sticky poo that builds up inside the fetus's gut during pregnancy, sometimes released when the baby is overdue, but also sometimes expelled when the baby is in a state of metabolic distress. In other words, oh shit. "What's happening, nurse?" There was a new brittle edge to her voice and the colour had drained from her face. Terror had replaced bravado. The curtains along the back wall ruffled and sighed with a breeze, and as the drab, pale pistachio fabric settled back into place, I became suddenly aware of the winter chill in the room. Every window had been opened. The whole scene was deeply wrong. A child with the ripe, round belly of a woman, a cold space on a warm ward, muddy drops of fluid raining onto a smooth, polished floor. And my vision swam with the incongruity of it all for one long, seasick moment before my midwife brain took over. I moved swiftly across the floor and put an arm around Crystal's shoulders, shuffling her back towards the bed. "Let's get you lying down on your side," I said, taking care over every word, hoping my voice wouldn't betray the panic that had fluttered in my chest. "You can tell me what happened, and then we'll get some help." "I was just opening the windows," she said, as I eased her down onto the mattress. I drew the blue thermal blanket up under Crystal's chin. The cheap waffle weave flickered with static, as it always did, and we both flinched. "I was going to have a cheeky fag, just the one, and I went to open the last window and it just started coming out." Crystal nodded in reply. "And does anything feel different now? Are you sore?" "Aye, nurse," she said. "I feel like I need to do a giant jobby, but it's just not coming." Double shit. Rectal pressure is often a sign that there's a baby sitting right down on your bowel, which is next door to your vagina, which for a 23-week baby is a one-way route to trouble. I looked down at the fob watch pinned to my chest. 10 minutes to 7. 1850, I noted to myself. Copious grade 2 meconium draining per vaginum. And then out loud to Crystal, "Listen to me. You need to stay right here. Stay warm. I'm going to go and get the other midwife and..." At this, her eyes grew wide. "But my baby? What are they going to do to my baby?" The honest answer was I didn't know. Crystal looked smaller than ever. Her fear had made her recede into the pillows, diminishing her with every passing second. As words whirled and faltered in my head, I instinctively reached out to sweep the thick cloud of hair away from her face. These gestures, the drawing of the blanket, the reaching out, were automatic, had been practiced many times with my own children in my own home. The curl of a small body under a quilt, the quiver of a frightened lip. These images triggered a response in me that required no thought or explanation. Comfort. This was what the mother in me had learned to provide long before midwifery had even entered my life. And this was the only thing I could reliably offer to Crystal at the moment when her world began to shatter.